Welcome to another edition of Vegas Bad Boy. I'm your host, DJ Impact, and I'm here with Simon Street and with Matt Michaels. It's good to see you guys. Some of our other members are doing their thing. You know, we're in the holiday season and birthday season, so sometimes people just need a little bit of a break, right?
Wait, what the fuck is a birthday season?
Well, you know what?
Is that like a whole year?
Some people celebrate their birthday a whole month, a whole week. They make it a season. So hopefully our guy's not doing that, but you never know, right? This is 3 Count, and thank you all for tuning in and checking us out. If you're in the live feed, you can definitely throw any comments in, and we'll take a look at that. If you're listening to us on our podcast, just thanks for downloading and for subscribing to us. All right, let's get right to it. Our first one comes from ProWrestling.com. It's titled, CM Punk claims NXT roster should be embarrassed over Pat McAfee being the best promo on the show. Now, just reading a little bit from it, it said that Punk watched the show and took to Twitter in order to provide his thoughts. The WWE legend claimed that the roster should be embarrassed due to the fact that McAfee is the best promo on the show, although he did note that it was down to circumstances, agreeing with the fan in one of his replies that it's down to WWE not brainwashing him. However, Punk did claim that the former NFL star is the best thing on the show that isn't named Rhea Ripley, clearly being a fan of the former NXT Women's Champion. Punk also stated that there's no reason for McAfee not to fully commit to wrestling. Okay, guys, let me throw you out there and see what your thoughts. Do you believe that all the roster, now think, because we know we just came off of a fresh War Games, everything leading up to War Games. Would you say that the NXT roster should be embarrassed over what Pat McAfee has been doing on the show as of late? What would you say? Go, Simon.
No, they really shouldn't, because those circumstances that Punk had mentioned in his tweet, has a lot to do with the way that they're taught to do promos. I think he mentioned it as in a robot, unnatural type of way. I think that there are certain individuals that can rise to do a finesse, like Pat McAfee. He's really good at doing promos on the mic, and so he probably didn't need to have to follow that equation that's being taught most of the time. But is it anything to be ashamed of? No, because let's be honest, Pat McAfee is not an in-ring performer like that. Yeah, he can do some spots, as he showed us. But if you saw that week in, we would see the difference. Keep him on the mic, not in the ring.
So you're saying that the NXT roster, that they shouldn't be embarrassed?
No.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, Matt Michaels. I mean, do you think that they're, I know CM Punk will kind of, blow things up a little bit. That's just kind of his character. He'll make something sound a lot. But I think he also believes in what he says as well. Do you think he has some sort of truth to what he's saying here, that the NXT roster should be embarrassed over what Pat McAfee's been doing?
The hardest thing here is throwing out a general blanket, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just the whole roster. With the exception of Rhea.
Yeah. Like, what about Gargano, right? I think he holds as well on the mic as well as in the ring. But okay, go ahead.
Look at seriously, Gargano, you got Ciampa. I mean,
yeah,
Ciampa fucking put Cameron Grimes. I'm sorry, Cameron Grimes, but he's a fucking entertaining promo.
Right.
The reason Pat McAfee stands out is because Pat McAfee sits at a desk and does a fucking talk show.
Right. Yeah.
If he wasn't good at it, then I would question what the fuck is wrong with this guy.
Yeah.
So he gets to practice every fucking day at being an over-exaggerated, example of himself. That's the other thing too. He plays Pat McAfee.
Yeah.
So you're not, you're not asking him to be something that he's not. you also, if you really want to get down to the nitty gritty, NXT is your development territory.
Right.
So you would expect that some of these guys might not be as good on the mic, but a lot of these guys, especially those who participated in War Games, everyone on that pay-per-view, they're all solid.
Yeah.
You know? So I think what he's, again, he doesn't hold anything back.
Yeah.
I think it's a motivation type of thing of, telling people that they should be embarrassed because, this guy who's an outsider can do it better than you who are actually getting paid to do this. Do it. But, look at some of the guys on the main roster that are not great promo
Yeah.
people.
Yep.
Right.
So I think that it's really nice when CM Punk keeps himself relevant, because then this way people can stay excited about when he's coming back next.
I think we'll be 20 years down the line going, boy,
Thank you.
I wonder if he's coming back.
And imagine if that were one of us, just off the sheer fact that you could drop a tweet in the bucket and immediately that just restarts the clock of everybody going crazy when you come back. I wish I could do that to make some money off of that. Otherwise, I'd say controversial shit too.
I guess maybe he's also just thinking, though, that after hearing Pat, he just gets energized into, he's getting sold on to the match.
Well,
and even the other guys, maybe although they have good promos, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're really getting exciting for what they're about to see.
So
maybe that's what he's trying to say. Mm-hmm.
Think about it. When you put Pat McAfee with three guys, those are three guys who are not known for their promotional skills, man.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's also, again, I think a lot of it comes down to character, because look at a guy like Dexter Lumis, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to say anything.
Right.
And he sells the match and what you're about to see just through that fucking gaze in his eyes.
Right.
Which is a fucking hard thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, of course, there is a little more energy and excitement, but you're also talking about the circumstance. Pat McAfee had one job, and that is to sell this.
Right.
And that's why they let him do it, is because he can do it.
Yeah.
So, can people, bring it up a notch? Absolutely. But at the same time, you're still missing one of your biggest promo guys who's about to come back, and that's Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about, see, McAfee is someone who's just come in recently. Cross has been someone who's been in the business. When Cross starts cutting his promos, then you can start talking about the other guys having to step up even more, because here's a guy now who does what you do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And if he makes you look any less because he's that much better at talking, then, it's time to step up your game. But I don't know. I think that sometimes the CM Punk, maybe being straight edge is not the fucking way to go.
Simon Street, just one quick thing for you. Now, the term brainwash was used by an actual Twitter fan, and then I think CM Punk just sort of kind of agreed. But the term brainwash, as far as how the guys do the promo, do you believe that all the guys just sound a certain way just because that's the way WWE tells them to sound? Or do you just believe that, it's not necessarily that they're brainwashed, it's just that they're trying to figure out their style. And in trying to figure that out, it may sound kind of what they're trained to do, but they're also learning how to get out of it.
Well, you kind of just said it. I mean, there's some people that you can teach something, and then they can take the information that is given to them, and they can make it their own. As you said, their style. And then there's some people that need to follow the cues, step 1, step 2, step 3. And that's where some people will sound robotic a little bit or scripted, as some people will say, because for them, they're not able to make it natural for them the way that they would be. And again, there's some cases where I've seen some people who, if they would just find that click, if it would just click in their head of how to make this sound natural for them, not trying to sound like somebody else or someone they're trying to sound like, it would just click for them. And I think maybe that's what that tweet, that fan saying brainwashed. I thought that was a bit exaggerating, but he was getting to a point.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see from that point where, how that goes. I mean, Pat McAfee is definitely a great talker on the mic. And like Matt says, I mean, this is his job. So, I mean, man, you can't do that and that's your job. That's definitely a problem. So, let's go to
really, really quick. You just made me think of a very interesting thing here. And that is this. Let's go main roster and let's look at Roman Reigns.
Perfect example.
He was fucking horrible as a face.
Yep, because he wasn't natural.
Horrible. Yeah. And that's what he came off as a robotic. It just was not in his fucking makeup to make that persona of a character work. He gets the opportunity to be this heel. You hone in on the family aspect, and all of a sudden you got fucking gold. Yep. So, you gotta remember, and Punk knows this better than anyone else because it was Punk's whole thing, the whole pipe bomb thing.
Sure.
Basically got him over, right?
Yep. Right.
To the extent where he would go on to become, such a popular persona and character. But did they try to do that to Punk and make him that, that cookie cutter? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that in contrast, sometimes it's the material or character you're given, and then sometimes you might have to just grow a pair and try something out. And, that's risky, but, in the cases of guys who are so confident and work really well, like Punk did, taking the gamble worked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Well, and also too, kudos to Pat McAfee. Just it says a lot about NXT, WWE, trusting him enough to be able to basically essentially do his promos, because I'm pretty sure they didn't write half the stuff he was writing or he was spitting. You know what I mean? So, I mean, kudos to him for being able to just, pull up to the plate and like Matt Michael said, he took a chance. They all took a chance and it paid off.
And let's give credit where credit is due with that too. That's Hunter.
Yeah.
Hunter taking the leap of faith. We can only see where, people go from here, but let's just call it.
Well, let me ask you, do you think Pat, I mean, I don't know if you guys know a little bit more than I do on what's his intentions, but is Pat looking to get more involved into WWE and kind of take a stand away from what he does now in radio, or is he just doing this as just something fun, one-offs here and that's it? Or we really just don't know. We just don't really know.
I'll voice my opinion on that one. Like I said earlier, unless he's going to truly dedicate himself to training for in-ring, that's where I would be interested to see what the end product will be, because we all know he's great on the mic, but to do in-ring week after week after week, I don't know if you're as good as a couple of spots on War Games. Is that fair for me to say? I think so.
I think it also highlights a very, very important thing, and that is bring back managers.
I agree. We should get a shirt. We should get a shirt that said "Bring back managers." Give managers a chance.
Because in all honesty, do we really even have to see Pat McAfee wrestle every week? No.
No.
But
Right.
if we
Yeah.
can see him manage the stable every week, that's
Yeah.
great. And, you know, and again, this is more so really a thing about Punk going after the younger talent to get them to step up. It's motivation. It's
Sure.
lighting a fire under the ass. But you know, hey, if CM Punk really believes in that, why not go down to FSW or FSW? That would be
That would
great.
be
Come on
great.
out to FSW.
That would be real great.
Yeah, go down to NXT
Yep.
and teach promo lessons and develop
Yep.
some of these kids.
Yeah.
I agree. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, it would be great to see him in that capacity. All right, let's go over to our second count. One actually comes from the New York Times.com, and then one also from 411mania.com. The one from the New York Times, they released their best performances of 2020. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, you can find all types of things on the list, just to name a few. There was an actress that won for season 3 of Ozarks, and also episode 7 of Lovecraft Country on HBO, which is a really good series. Netflix, there was an actress that won in The Queen's Gambit. So you kind of get an idea on, and they also even have one that's just kind of different. They had a Pete Buttigieg was hosting Jimmy Kimmel Live. And that also was that got one of the best performances. But out of all of that, Maxwell Jacob Freeman doing Me and My Shadow on AEW got some acknowledgement from there. I'm gonna take this two ways. I'm gonna just first off read just a little bit, because I'm kind of wondering if the writer of this seems so descriptive. He seemed like he may have an issue with WWE more than just the idea that he really loved the segment on AEW. But I want to get your opinion on that. The second thing is a question, and maybe I'll start off with this one first, because we've all kind of remember this particular what do they call it? Dinner Debonaire, right? On AEW. I think that was what the segment was called.
Dinner Debonaire.
So yeah. My first question, do you believe that out of some of the, as they go through the highlights of 2020, and I just named a few shows, a few networks and everything. First off, do you think that this portion of what MJF did is up to that level of best of 2020? That would be the first question I would ask either one of you. Would you look at that and say, oh, I can kind of see that being a part of being next to Ozarks, Lovecraft Country, the Queen's Gambit, Jimmy Kimmel Live that Pete Buttigieg hosted, and so on and so on. Would you see that that's an equivalent there? I'll start with you, Simon Street.
I would say from an art standpoint, yes, because you're showing different pieces in different arts. Now, I've seen some of the Queen's Gambit. I definitely watched Lovecraft Country, and I know who they're talking about, the woman that played Hippolyta.
Right.
Definite standout performance. And I've seen parts of Ozark, and I know people have talked about that. So I assumed when they had this collection, when you're talking about artistic in places that you wouldn't expect it, you wouldn't expect these people that they mentioned in these like Ozarks or Lovecraft Country. I'm pretty sure I know which episode they're talking about, and parts of the Queen's Gambit. And of course you have, Dinner Debonaire, MJF and Chris Jericho. It makes sense because it's an unlikely place that you would have imagined such a great scene or a great show to, seen something very entertaining.
Yeah. What about you, Mike? Would you add them a part of the best 2020 when you kind of see what other things were kind of named for this year? You would give them credit for being a part of this list?
So I think that it was writer biased.
Okay.
Very easily.
Yeah.
Why that showed up on this type of list is kind of head scratching.
Yeah.
I tell you, when I first opened the article up and I start reading it, I'm like, where the fuck is this going? Because I'm just reading like all this
Sure.
entertainment stuff for the first, like, 4 or 5 stanzas, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, Listen, it was a unique thing. The interesting thing too that the writer did was he didn't mention Jericho until like a good 2/3 of the way through.
Right.
He referred to it basically as MJF's song and
Right.
dance number, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, he titled his name that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I, I don't know, what is going on there. I have no idea who this writer is.
Sure.
But I would argue to say that yes, it was entertaining. It was a great concept. It was very original. So is Firefly Funhouse.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that we've never seen anyone do in wrestling. So, um, yeah, it's, you know, uh, but then I looked at some of the other stuff on the list too, and it's like I wouldn't pay attention to half that shit anyway.
Sure.
You know,
I will say this. This is coming back to him. Like, it sounds like there's really maybe some hate here. He says some weeks the athleticism at this professional wrestling startup is more exciting than anything happening in Vince McMahon's empire. Wow, for real? That's how you're going to start off the sentence? Okay. And then here we go. And no one in WWE has the kids' combination of dictation, which is Juilliard by way of Long Island, intensity or cheesiness either. Listen, we like MJF. We give MJF his credit, okay? But wow, I mean, that's just to start off those two sentences, just shitting all over WWE, to put MJF over in this, best of 2020 in the New York Times was just really shocking to me. It was like, wow.
think of it like this.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. MJF in himself, he is a very talented young guy, right?
Yeah.
So AEW is not making him better. He's making AEW better.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's so good naturally and so driven and thinks outside the box, I would argue to say that if he was on Vince's product,
Mm-hmm.
you would be seeing the startings of the next Rock or John Cena.
Mm-hmm.
So the elevation that Vince's product gives you allows you to go onto superstardom in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
This was a song and dance number in the middle of a show that the fans think is the greatest wrestling program out there.
I love how you take the opportunity to say that.
Well, it's it's true, but
Yeah.
and Chris and Chris Jericho's quote in this thing that was
which I was getting to next. Yeah.
yeah, go ahead and read that.
Yeah, he says, once again, it's proof that pro wrestling comes in many shapes and forms, but the most important thing is that it entertains. And then it goes on to bash Louisville dipshit times. But I will say this. Let's think about, and I'm sorry, Mike, because you weren't finished, but I will say, at least in Chris Jericho, at least he gives props to the entire wrestling sort of company organization. He didn't say, well, this is AEW's best. He says, proof that pro wrestling comes in many shapes and forms, and that it entertains. So that keeps it. And I thought that was a good way of putting it in that, in his tweet. But continue on that though.
Well, you made that follow up with the fact that the Louisville Times basically thought it was one of the more horrendous things that they've ever seen.
Yeah, and he said they're still whining about it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, in essence, what is the good thing about these platforms that, these writers have, uh, is that they can take things they like or dislike and criticize them.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing is. I mean, so, because you could look on that list and you could argue that any of those things weren't as valid as this guy sees them.
Right.
So, I mean, look at Simon Street. I mean, his opinions are usually, like the Louis Dipshitville Times.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Hey, it is what it is, man.
But you know what?
Uh-huh.
I will say this, and it's just only focusing in on My Shadow and Me, or whatever, the one that we saw with MJF. I will say that I've had people who don't watch a stitch of wrestling and who have made derogatory comments in my youth about wrestling talk about, wow, I saw a clip of this Broadway. I thought it was Saturday Night Live because it was so well put together. And I thought it was a musical. Have you heard about it? And I kind of told them it's just a segment on the show. It made me wonder, I would love to see a wrestling musical, wrestling show musical. I would just want to see it just one time. Disney does it all the time. I know you guys are going to just set the hell up, but I'm just saying, I would like to see from start to finish a musical movie made by Disney. It's probably better than the Netflix shit that we saw.
Right.
Well, the only reason why I say is because Netflix came up with an NXT movie, which was okay. But I'm saying Disney because, they are the masters of musical numbers. So, that would be cool to see some shit.
Disney came up with an NXT movie?
No, you totally just... Anyway, let's go to the next one. I'm sorry I even brought it up.
That is what he said, right, DJ?
No, I said Netflix came out with an NXT movie. I said that was okay. Yeah. But if Disney came out with a musical wrestling movie.
What did Netflix do that was an NXT movie?
It had about to do with a little kid that got a luchador mask, and it was just like I forget what it's called. Basically this kid was wrestling like real NXT roster characters. Like I watched it with my kid. It was okay. It wasn't bad. You probably don't know it even exists. So why am I even going? Why am I even
I was just curious because I vaguely that you described it now kind of heard about it maybe, but
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
you're gonna make me look up the name now. Okay, it's called The Main Event. That's what it's called, The Main Event. It was this year. It didn't make the list of 2020 standouts in this article, but it was The Main Event, and it's a good kid show. You'd like it. Just put on your little luchador mask. I know you have in your room. Watch it. Some popcorn. Feel right at home, buddy.
Unless it has a tiger in it on Netflix, I don't watch it.
All right, over to our third topic, which is from healbynature.com, titled Triple H says WWE is open to working with other promotions. Now, it states that the game explains that while WWE's doors are, quote, open for business, end quote, they are looking for long-term benefits and not just an unnecessary crossover. He later asked that the chairman, Vince McMahon, is open to anything if it means good business. And so, I mean, I guess it's fair. Let me just kind of read a little bit of what Triple H says. It says, we're open for business in a lot of ways and a lot of things. People's thoughts and misperceptions, their perceived knowledge of what we do and how we think is often greatly misinterpreted and not accurate. We are open to the right business opportunities. Yeah, at any given time, we're open to things. It just depends on what they are and if they're beneficial to us in the long term. When I say long-term, I don't mean 3 months, I mean 10 years. Long-term, that's how we think. We're not necessarily worried about minute by minute. Open for business. I think Vince says a lot of things, and I've been around him long enough that if it's the right thing and meaningful to the business, he's open to anything. Okay, so guys, of course, this was brought out because of the crossover that we have with AEW and Impact. And, you know, I even remember at some point in our podcast kind of mentioning that at times I wouldn't mind seeing crossovers happening, mainly with, of course, WWE. But Michaels, interestingly enough, actually kind of said the same words that Triple H would say, and that is, you know, how will that benefit WWE? And the reality of it is, I think it could benefit both. But who definitely would gain more would be the other organization. I mean, hands down. I mean, when you're the top, it's not like you're going to go further up, you know. But at the same time, I think it could create some very interesting, you know, something interesting that could bring, you know, dollars to you. And, you know, and I'm sure if everything is worked out, if it's talked about, you know, even with WWE, however it's all dealed on paper, if it's 60-40 WWE get or 70-30, any other organization talked about it, I don't see why that would not be a bad thing. And I'm just curious, what do you guys think about this whole crossover? I mean, Triple H says he's open to it if it's long term. Now, he says 10 years. I doubt that, but I don't think it's going to be 3 months either. What do you think about having crossovers? I mean, I don't know if this is what we're seeing. I mean, there's always been, of course, New Japan and ROH and or you know, Impact. So we kind of always had that, but nothing in terms of WWE, AEW, Impact, or ROH. The main ones kind of doing a crossover, you know, to the extent that we're seeing now. So what do you think? I mean, do you think there's a chance of this ever happening to WWE, or it would just be something Vince McMahon would just be like, although Triple H say, yeah, he'll be up for it if it sounds good, you kind of think, yeah, he's probably really not up for it. What do you think?
I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
There's only 3 of us this week, man.
There's only 3. I don't have to count. All right. You know what? To be honest with you, I think the way that, you know, Triple H said was perfectly. I mean, and it's always been the standpoint of how WWE does business. It's smart, long term. It does need to be long term, because if the investment isn't there, and it's not something that's going to benefit WWE, and it's not something that they can, you know, span over a couple of years, and it's not worth it. I mean, the biggest thing was the whole Saudi deal. That was long term. That wasn't a one-time deal. And even though there wasn't a crossover per se with talent, although you had, was it Mansoor? But really, that was like something that WWE was working on already, I believe, before that came through. But again, that's the closest thing we will have to what Paul said, or Triple H said. It got to be long term. They're the ones cutting the biggest check. They're the one with the biggest piggy bank. You name one promotion that's going to be able to match dollar for dollar at the table to start something that's crossover.
So if that is the point, okay, and this is what I'm saying, if that's the point where we know that they are the top, then why even say that we are open to working? Because if you're saying you're open, then, and you know that they already have everything they possibly need to crush everyone else, you either not open or you are open. He's saying they aren't open, but I have yet to ever hear, and maybe you guys let me know if I'm wrong. Have you ever heard in this since WWE has been in existence that there were talks or possibilities of some crossover to happen ever?
I'm pretty sure there's stuff that's come on the table, but again, it's one of those things to where, think about it.
Well, Dave Meltzer didn't find out for it if that was the case.
And I'm not talking about in the last 10 years, but I'm sure in the past there's been stuff that's come up on the table. But I'm just telling you, It's never going to pan out. It's just never going to pan out.
Matt Michaels, go.
Have you guys like totally forgotten that the WWE were the ones who had ECW on their fucking show and they worked with them?
But that was after they bought them. Didn't they buy them?
No,
I thought they bought them.
1996, 97, that era when ECW showed up on Monday Night Raw, and they set up that the pay-per-view where Lawler was at their pay-per-view. This is
I'll be honest with you. I never knew. I knew that happened, but it never even occurred to me.
I remember that happening.
Crossover.
I remember that happening. But what was the end term? What, 2 years later?
The end term?
Yeah.
The end term was very simple. Vince McMahon was the one who kept ECW in business because he knew that by doing so, that would create still the just enough attention, enough competition, enough development, because that's what they needed to stay in competition with WCW.
That's what I was saying. That long term, that was a long term deal.
So is that the only time you can think of that happened?
That's the only time that they really sincerely needed it. In terms of if they didn't work out something with them, WCW could easily, the way WCW was already getting Mysterio and Guerrero and Benoit and all those guys. And at that point too, without ECW getting exposure on WWE TV, the potentiality of ECW making it for their first pay-per-view would have never happened. So Vince was smart enough to see that this wasn't competition. This was a way to help neutralize the other company, which was your competition. But if you think about stuff like this goes back in wrestling decades. You had the relationship between Japan and USA. All right. In the long term, the reason you did that is because when you had territories, you only had X amount of time for stars to be viable in terms of your heels, essentially, to face guys like Bruno Sammartino. Right. So if you had, X, Y, and Z you've gone through now within 2 years, you need other kind of threats. So you would get someone from, Japan to come over, work some kind of program, but you would also send your guys over there in return. So they would get exposure and it would build your brand in Japan. Dating right into the fact that a lot of people don't realize that Hulk Hogan was sent over to Japan to build the brand.
Yep.
So hooking up with other companies is not a new idea. It's something that if they were to say that they weren't open to potentially listening,
be bad for business.
Yeah, it's bad for business. Exactly. Also, you have to take into consideration what is the level of necessity to do a crossover. So right now, the WWE has 3 programs a week that are on television.
And 1/4, technically, if you count NXT UK.
Yeah, and you got that product as well. So does it benefit them bringing in, let's say they bring in guys from ROH, right? What does that do for them in terms of bumping their exposure? You know what it does? It makes the marks go, oh, look, it's Jay Lethal on TV on WWE. This is fucking awesome. Jay Lethal gets pinned. Oh, fuck WWE. They just brought him in to job out.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I was going to add to that ECW thing real quick. What I thought you were talking about was because, I remember it, and I had to look it up, but in 2003, WWE acquired the rights for Extreme Championship Wrestling, the trademarks, the video library, and everything. I thought that when you talked about that date back in 97, 98, that was that long purpose of, okay, we're going to do this with this amount of time, so that way later on, we could go ahead and do it. And that's when Vince was really starting to look at catalogs as it's important to have that, because you can make money off of stuff that they were making money of a long time ago.
It's part of it.
Are central. Yeah, that's what I thought at first.
It's part of it. I think the overall goal in general for Vince at a certain point was that he wanted to do a network. Let's face it.
He did.
So that's what it comes down to. Acquiring stuff was very important. But ironically enough, if you look at it, the relationship, remember, he didn't really have a relationship with Paul Heyman. So that relationship that was started up in essence to potentially combat WCW not only got you the video library and the rights to it down the line, but has also established a working relationship of like 25 years with Paul Heyman.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, you want to play the long game. That relationship worked out really, really nice, So
so bottom line is, we're not going to get any crossovers.
Well, and that's only if, like I got to be honest. Unless one of the, say, the entities of possibility, if there's even any, like ROH, okay, or an Impact, okay, unless they're willing to get in bed with WWE for a long extended period of time of 5 years or more. Do you see what I'm saying? That's a huge commitment for somebody coming in with a small piggy bank. And that's no disrespect to ROH or Impact. I'm just saying.
Well, and the other thing too is, so realistically, why are you going to do a deal with one of those companies when the contract runs out of a certain wrestler? You can just offer them a contract and sign them.
We're going to get them anyways. That's what they say.
Right. Think of it that way. So unless it's on the table where they have let's say the TNA library, right? Hey, and they've done leasing with them. So they've been able to show certain things on the network for certain documentaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, let's say that Impact, they realize, hey, we're really running at a loss here and we need to do something. They could reach out to Vince and say, hey, we'll give you all our catalog, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, if you're willing to use some of our talent in NXT. That kind of deal is the thing they would cut.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're the other thing too, we don't know what the deal is with Impact and AEW.
We don't.
So, like I said, for all we know, it could come down to the fact where in potentially getting someone like Don Callis involved in their fold, they in turn have to help out Impact a little bit. Then that's what that's centered on. And again, I think that the grandiose thoughts of wrestling fans just immediately start booking all these matches. And the truth of the matter in today's society of wrestling is that realistically, those matches could potentially happen at any point because contracts expire and people sign everywhere at this point.
Right.
So, You know, I don't know. Sometimes when these questions get thrown out like that, it's just like, what did you expect Triple H to say? Oh no, we're above that. We're not going to consider that. Only losers who need the help, bolstering the product. No, they're a business, man.
Well, and also too, if
So
you look at Paul with NXT, right? I mean, that's a program that benefits greatly from a lot of acquisitions whose contract have come up for a long time ago. So he always wants to leave the door open, but with certain provisions that need to be looked at. It's just better business. But I agree with you. A lot of Super Saiyan marks get super excited with their fantasy booking. I always tell them all, like, look, I love your enthusiasm. Go pick you up a WWE 2K game. Don't pick up 20 because it sucked, but get 19 or something below that. Create you a character of who you want, like we all did when we were teenagers, but you're still grown doing it. Because I used to put AJ Styles in 2000, it was like 2K15, or even before that, putting him in there because I want to see him and Samoa Joe. And just like Michael said, where did they end up? WWE.
Yeah. Well,
let's talk about the bigger issue here.
okay.
The fact that Street decided that he's now going to refer to Hunter as Paul.
Because
are you guys on a one-on-one relationship that I don't know about?
Look, I tell you what. All right.
He didn't tell us about it, and we're trying to get to that level. You know Paul.
No, I'm just gonna say, look, at the end of the day, you got to dress for the part that you want, and that's what happened eventually. It didn't happen in the day, okay? And you know, I'm trying to make some upward movable ladder steps. You know, no, actually, I just happened to say it because I'm just saying it because they said in the goddamn article they said Paul. That's why I repeated it. I don't know Paul from other Paul that lives around the corner, probably. Shit,
stay at the lower rung, man. Stay at the lower rung because the last
they'll probably devour me. They'll devour me.
Yeah, the last thing we want to do is go around disrespecting guys like Triple H by using his real name when it's you don't know him. And,
I was only saying it because the article said it like 4 or 5 times. I actually read the article and it said it like 4 or 5 times. So.
Yeah, well, that's also like
writing school.
Well, and someone who is an official reporter and has credentials.
So what you're saying is I'm not official enough to refer to the great Triple H as Paul. Yeah. You know what? I stand down. My apologies. I will know my place.
There you go.
Will know my place.
Don't stop making us look
bad. Now, what we can talk about is the fact that him and his wife don't wear wedding rings.
That is very interesting. I've seen that a lot. That's very interesting.
I thought we was about to get back into H's good presence, but you just knocked us right back out again. Thank you, Michaels, for that. I appreciate it.
He could take it, though. He could take it. Take it.
Oh, guys, that's our 3 count for tonight. I'm going to let you guys give your final thoughts for the week, but I want to thank everybody for hanging out, listening to us on our live feed and, sending in comments and everything. We thank for the folks that still hanging out with us. We love it, and sending us comments during the show as well. If you actually read an article that you would like for us to talk about in 3 count, you can always just tag it to our social media and say, hey, take a look at this and talk about that. You also can send it to our email, which is Vegas Bad Boys with the Z of podcasting @gmail. I know it's a long title, but it'll get to us. And again, for everyone listening to us on our podcast, thank you for listening, downloading. Just make sure you let everybody know we exist. All right. With that, final thoughts for the week. Simon Street, what you got for the people?
I just want to send a big happy birthday shout out to our very own Vegas Bad Boy, Sin City Steve.
Yeah.
May you have a very delightful winning birthday. And we look forward to having you back next week as usual. Also, too, as what Sin City Steve would always say, he would say big shouts out and much respect for all those that defend our freedoms overseas or also in the armed forces, especially our boy Stormin' Mormon, and also Rep Sports. I don't know what he usually says. I think it's REPP. Sorry, I screwed that up, but Rep Sports. is our proud sponsor. This is why he does it and I don't, but I had to say it.
And you have to enter the code. What?
You have to. It's Vegas.
Yeah, there you go.
I got that, Vegas. And also to ladies and gentlemen, with COVID rates going up and in all of this in the air, just make sure that you, for freaking Pete's sake, just wear a condom, because the worst thing you could do is just make more babies. I'm just saying. So
Yeah, okay.
That's all I'm saying.
All right, Matt Michaels, what you got, man?
I'll take that a step further.
Okay.
Get snipped. If Simon Street would have listened to my advice, he would have been in a better situation in terms of no.
He would have moved up from cornflakes to frosted flakes. I understand.
Yeah.
That sounds like a drug reference.
And this week, try watching something that you haven't watched before. Step outside of your comfort zone. Watch something that maybe that you haven't had the time or have heard about, maybe you're interested in. Step outside of that comfort zone and watch something new. I definitely suggest the movies where they're shitting on each other. It's the best kind of porn out there. So please.
I was like, what movie are they shitting on each other?
Oh, a lot of movies, man. You got to check this shit out. It's amazing.
So is it like just rapid, like firing shit on each other?
Oh, it's if you Japanese women, for whatever reason, really like to have themselves filmed where the other girl's just shitting in their mouth, man.
Oh,
it's
Jesus.
Like straight yogurt, yogurt out of the dispenser.
Oh my
That's
God.
pretty much what it looks like. Yep.
Guys, thank you for listening, and we will see you back next week. Don't forget, tomorrow, Wednesday, the Falco Files. Make sure you listen and tune in, all right? Until then, we're out. Peace.